can't design and build fast enough. It's because you can't make decisions fast enough on what you want to be when you grow up, which again, that's a symptom. But if you go back to why that is, it's because you didn't do the implementation planning up front. You didn't do that business blueprint up front in that phase zero to have that clarity so that not every single decision is made already, but the major decisions are already made. The major time intensive decisions are made before the army of technical providers start to show up and the meter starts running. So I bring up that one symptom because that's an example of how that symptom ties back to a root cause that you need to address.
For sure. And this all kind of sparks the question for me of Eric, in a real world example, have you seen like a project where governance and visibility really saved the day for the project, and what did that look like?
Yeah, I've neglected to mention governance, which was really the whole crux of your question and the article it's that you're talking about here. But yes, the governance can save the day, but I would say governance, you don't want to use project governance as a way to fix a problem. You can, but if you put governance in place early on in phase zero, during that implementation planning phase zero phase that I was talking about, you're doing a lot of things in that phase. You should be doing not just the business blueprint I talked about, but it's also defining your change strategy, your architecture strategy, your decommissioning strategy for your different systems, how you're going to integrate multiple systems, what the overall detailed plan is, what the resource plan is for you internally, and then also, not last but not least, is the project governance. You know, what is the overall program management plan going to look like? What are the controls you're going to put in place for how decisions are made, and how you manage scope and time and budget and all that stuff. So that's all really important to get in place up front. Now, if you're already in the midst of a project and you haven't done it, it's better late than never. But now you're playing catch up and you're more on defense, trying to clean stuff up. Which, if that's where you are, that's just the reality of it, and that's okay. But if you have time to influence it and change it, do it earlier. Do that program management up front, and that's a big part of what clients hire us to do, is to come in and be an extension of their internal PMO and helping them get the governance and controls in place so that they can manage the overall project, they can manage the vendors, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of slide into our next newsworthy article, which is kind of on the same topic in a way, but something that has been a trend or a big trend in the ERP world for the past years here, and that's been the standard advice of rip out your old system and replace it from scratch. But really, this article is questioning, is that really the smartest way to modernize anymore? According to this insight from World, this rip and replace mindset might actually be setting organizations up for more pain than progress. They argue that there's a better way and that you need to think of your ERP as a core that you can extend rather than demolish. Instead of wiping everything clean, the idea is to add modern platforms on top of your existing ERP. That lets you move faster, protect the processes you've already built, and experiment with things like AI or Internet of Things without starting from zero. Plus, with low code and no code tools, you can even empower non technical teams to build workflows and apps themselves, which sounds way less painful than a giant multi year replacement project. So basically, it's a layered modernization approach, which that keeps the works, enhance what doesn't work, and then gives yourself a flexible and future ready foundation. Eric, when should leaders really consider like a rip and replace versus when should they build on top instead? Or what is kind of your opinion on all this?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a big dilemma. It's something we are going to unpack in more detail with our guest today, with Greg Benton here after the next break. But in the interim, I'll give you sort of a summary response, and that is, first of all, if you talk to software vendors, ERP software vendors in particular, they're going to tell you, oh, absolutely, you need to rip and replace because that's the way you get innovation. If you rip out the old system, put in a new one, now you've got cloud-enabled, AI-driven functionality, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true, but that is a lot of pain to go through, and it takes a lot of time and money before you ever get to the point of thinking about innovation. So I like to think of it as like, two phases or two layers of a transformation. You've got your sort of your system of record that you're replacing. It's just sort of like just keeping the lights on, having your data, giving your data a place to live, having basic workflows in place, just being able to run the business at a basic level. That's sort of, I'll consider that all system of record. But then system of innovation is where you start thinking, okay, how can we now use AI to make our jobs easier and better? How can we use analytics, advanced analytics? How can we, how can we use some advanced supply chain functionality that we're not taking advantage of now? You need, in one way, you do need that system of record as a base before you can build on that system of innovation or the innovative processes. But the question becomes, do you really need to do that all through your ERP provider? And do you need to go through the pain of ripping out your back office system of record when you could potentially just be looking at other solutions that give you value on what you already have? And basically, whether it's just an interim solution or whether it's a long-term solution, it's still the same point, which is you have to look at the risk reward and cost benefit. For example, if it's going to cost you, if you're using an old legacy system like SAP ECC or Microsoft Dynamics AX or Oracle EBS or whatever it is, let's just say you're using an older legacy system, let's just say it's not a terribly outdated system. If you're on an AS400 or like a green screen still, this does not apply, because in that case, I'd say, yeah, you probably need to get off that and get somewhere in the 21st century, and not be stuck in the 20th century. But assuming where most companies are is they've got systems that have been around for, say, 10 to 20 years. And in most cases, they're not ideal, but they're not broken per se in many cases. But there's a lot of benefit that they're not getting, or a lot of technological value that they're not taking advantage of because they've got these older systems. So that's where you start thinking, well, what if we leave those systems in place, short-term, long-term, whatever, and then we add other platforms or interoperability tools or AI tools that leverage what we have and get immediate value? And that's what a lot of our clients, more and more of our clients, are starting to do that, to say, we're going to do ERP, but we're going to wait 3 or 5 years and we're going to sort of flip the script here. And we're going to get immediate value on modern technology without going through tens of millions of dollars, in some cases, tens of millions of dollars to replace that back office system that's not really going to deliver a huge amount of business value. So I think just being agnostic, objective, rational, non-emotional, don't get caught up in the whole, oh, but our system's outdated. Oh, we're not in the latest and greatest cloud system. Oh, we've got technical debt, or, Gartner says that we should do this because, the vendors all sponsored they commissioned a report for Gartner to say they should do this. So you've got to sort of read that stuff, pay attention to it, but don't bet your career on that stuff, because it's very biased stuff that you're getting from the industry. And just do what's right for you and look objectively at what the cost benefit is. It could be that it's a lower cost and potentially lower, it could be lower business value overall, but it might be a higher ROI actually, because your cost and risk is much lower if you just go with more of an incremental improvement to what you have. And it may be that, it buys you some time to kick the can down the road, and maybe 3 or 5 years from now, you start thinking about, okay, now that we've got this value out of this top layer of interoperability or AI or whatever, now we can think about ripping out our old system and replacing it, because we're going to have to eventually. So that's the way I'd look at it.
Yeah.